first couple of generations, Patrick and Parthenia, the son and daughter-in-law that we're all connected to, it was described by the priest in an account back then as people who were really poor, who traveled and moved around on the land, renting land or working for others, but they did succeed in getting their own land. The land has changed so much. If you look at St. Anne's, it went from a territory that basically had just been occupied by the Indians, and so just felling all the trees that were on the land to get some open land that they can plant, take back the land from nature, remove all the trees. This is like the forest primeval we're talking about. And they did it, clearing hundreds, thousands of acres. It was the next generation, the generation of Big Pat and John William, that really got the family well positioned. They were very prominent in that part of Leake County. I know John William had something like 3,000 acres at one point. I don't know how much Big Pat had, but they were movers and shakers, if you will, in the community. The one word that would describe John William, I never knew, and that he died in 1940, 5 years before I was born. But the one word to describe that man would be driven. The stories of how much he accomplished in his lifetime, acquiring 3,000 acres of land, setting up all his children with 500-acre farms, establishing a sawmill, a grist mill, a country store, a post office, a school. It's kind of amazing that this man did all of that in a relatively short lifetime. This, more than anything else, tells me where this drive to succeed that seems to be genetic through much of the family. I actually remember Big Pat. He lived on 20-some years after his older brother, John William, had died. And he was an incredible patriarch for the family and one of the really highly respected men in Leake County, serving on different boards and on the board of the bank in Carthage. Highly respected. St. Anne's Road, coming off Red Dog Road, there at the corner where the church was located. About 10 miles long is what I've read along the old road there. I've had many scares up in there that I was going to be bogged down and couldn't get out. And she said, well, actually they've only paved part of it, and I think that's a good thing because it allows the country to stay much more as it was than if there were an asphalt road all the way through and people were using it as a shortcut to get from one place to another. I mean, I'd get down on the floor of the car. It freaked me out. There was no railing. All they had was, just two tracks that you were to follow going across. And Frida said her mother was worse than me, that when they got to the bridge, she would demand that the car stop. And Frederick would drive on across, and she would walk across.
I think life up there back in the day was truly wonderful. Mm-hmm. And like you said, they didn't have any money. Daddy made more money the year that, or the years that he was in World War II. Mm-hmm. He always sent Nanny, about half of his paycheck back. And I think he was paid $20 a month, $22 or $3 a month, mm-hmm. For a soldier's pay. Made more money in one of those years, and Big Daddy made 5.
He would tell us about the struggles of the Great Depression, and he would say, well, there was no money, and no money. I mean, no money. If you knew anybody that had any money, you might be able to borrow some, but there was no money. And that was what defined my dad's generation. They were living off the land more than anything else, just like my mother's parents that were here.
One time, Daddy said a lot of times he felt like he was real poor. You know, they had shoes, but, you know, Nanny would instruct them, don't put your shoes on until you go inside. So you take your shoes off and tuck them under your arm and go wherever you're going to go. And then before you go inside, you put your shoes on, so you wouldn't wear your shoes out. And, but Daddy said he did something, got in trouble at school, and so he didn't get to go eat with everybody. After lunch, after everybody else left for lunch, you know, then he got to go back to the cloakroom and get his lunch pail or whatever, you know, like that. There wasn't one lunch pail left in there. He reached up there and got it. And it was kind of light. He opened it up and looked. He said it was a tack hammer and 9 hickory nuts. But he always thought they were poor.
Brother, that's poor.
It's poor.
Show you how hard the times were before the war. My dad, cotton was, it fell to nothing. I remember we had a bale of cotton out there under an oak tree, and they couldn't sell it.
Really?
It brought maybe a penny a pound, something like that. I find the price of cotton went up a little bit. But my dad, he was trying to help the family because there was 7 in his family, which was probably not a big number of kids back then, but it was still, you know, to feed and clothe them and all. It was. So my dad, he would take any kind of work he could get. One of the jobs he took was cut these pine trees, and then they would have to peel the bark off of them. And he was getting something like a penny a foot or something like that to peel those logs. Civil Conservation Corps, my dad joined that, and they took out so much a month and sent back to the family, and I can't remember how much it was. It wasn't a lot, but in today's money it would have been pretty good.
You know, my grandmother, Mary, was kind of a bookkeeper for the Harkins family from my standpoint. And, you know, if you ever were going to get your hands on a nickel or a dime or a little money up there, she had a special place in the closet in the main bedroom where she and my grandfather that occupied. And Buddy, she could go in that closet and she could pull out a little bag that was full of silver and had some greenback in it, but she always had some money. Not much probably by today's standard, but my grandmother was never broke. And I remember when she came to Jackson, I don't know where she was getting her money. I guess that was in the early 50s. There was old age pensions. I don't know if there was very much Social Security for people that didn't put the time in.
Yeah.
But she eked out enough from somewhere between the help from the families to live right well here in Jackson the last years that she lived. And she lived to be up in her 80s.
And they ended up with not the best land in the world. The land down right by the river, because of the annual flooding, was very good, but that land ran out very soon. And if you can remember back to the days before the roads up there were paved, you'll remember the red clay dust that just covered your car and covered you when you were going up there and crossing that rickety old bridge.
They were surviving with their milk cows and their oats that they grew and fodder for the animals and chickens, and they were living off the land. And they were doing that very much at St. Anne's, except they were growing cotton, which was eating their lunch, so to speak. Cotton was not a winter for people at St. Anne's because the red clay dirt was wore out a century before. We were over there on a red clay hill, and what they would do, they would clear some timber and they would call it, well, that's the new ground. Well, the new ground was supposed to produce better. Well, it did for a while.
The ones that stayed there the longest and all that were the ones that owned what few little creek bottoms there were.
Right.
And that made good cotton. Yeah, cow farms weren't a thing that, people did. Cows just bought kind of indiscriminately, from different farmers and all. Or somebody would have stayed up there, or a couple, 2 or 3 families would have stayed up there and had big cow farms.
In 1942, my grandmother Kraft died. Well, there were 2 things coming into play. My dad was down here in Madison County, had bought a farm, and he was trying to make a living on it. Well, all of the labor had gone north to work in the war industries. And so he was having a hard time. I think we have a picture of Paul and I in a cotton field, and we're trailing along behind my dad, and he's dragging this long 9-foot cotton sack and picking cotton. That was his crop. That was, he had to get it in, and there was really not a lot of help there. And it was a fun time for us, because nobody ever said, don't leave this yard. So that gave us a wide range of places to ramble. They'd say, watch for snakes. And Daddy would tell about getting bit by a copperhead, and he survived it. Daddy would like to just ramble, and he knew where the muscadines grew, and he would walk, and if he found flowers, he would bring me a branch of flowers or something that he found. And mostly we walked with him. We had a big snow one time, and I don't know, for whatever reason, we had a coon, and we cooked a coon. But I know that most people would not find that very tasteful, but that was something we did. Very last year we lived there, we finally got electricity. Well, it was just electric lights and a refrigerator. That was the extent of it. We would go by, visit Allie and Theodore. The morning Andrew married Edith Weisenberger, they came to our house, and Andrew rode to the church with us in Granddaddy's 46 Ford. Our school bus did not run that day. All the kids were off for the wedding down here at our church. We all got to see Andrew and Edith get married. Michael died. Paralee moved to be with her family out at New Providence, or wherever it is. And then John William bought the Paralee place. All our house at St. Anne's the piers were all native rock. I guess all of them that I knew had piers of native rock.
No, I didn't intend to go to school. That was not in my plans. But we had sharecroppers on the place, and they taught me from little bitty on, before I went to start school, how to fish. And the little creek, I think it was Smith Creek, and anyway, they taught me how to fish, and they would let me plow the mules. They taught me how to plow the mules when I wasn't about 5 years old, and I was small. I'd have to reach up for the handles on the plow. And of course, they had an ulterior motive. They could sit in the shade and watch me go around and around the field with the mules, and the mules could tell the time better than you could with a watch, because when it came time to quit, when you get out to the end of the road, they would head for the barn, and you just have to hang on to the plow, because they wasn't going to go back. I guess another memory I have, a fond memory of Lee County and St. Anne's, I guess it was on Saturday that the Choctaws would go to town to as they would say in New Orleans, to make their groceries. Choctaws would come down at St. Anne's Road. They were strung out walking. They always had on these very colorful dresses. But my dad, he learned to speak Choctaw, and he could count in Choctaw. And Kathy probably remembers some of it, but I can't. Across from St. Anne's Church, there was a county road that went up into what they call the Government Hills. And that's where this band of Choctaws was from. And they, I looked it up on a map one time, and they had a little, I may imagine from 5, 10, maybe up to 20-acre little farms that was, I guess, granted to them. I don't know how they got that land, but Josephine, I don't remember how long they lived there, but she was married to a man named Roy Chambers, and he died while I was just a little fella, and he was a veteran. So they had something that really impressed me. They had a 21-gun salute for him at his funeral, right there in front of Uncle D. Pat's house. It was a walk, and the soldiers were lined up on either side of the walk. But he was a good man. Me and Kathy, we had never been to a movie or anything, you know, never ate in a restaurant or but anyway, he took us into Carthage to a movie, just me and Kathy. And I was probably 4 or 5 at the time, and to me it was so real, it was scary. It was frightening to me. It was this big screen and everything bigger than life. But no, we didn't have a lot of playmates. Now, sometimes we'd have a cousin that would be visiting up there with some of the neighbors, and like Ken Drake, you know, they lived out on North Jackson, and he would come up and visit. And me and Kathy were just little when they christened St. Joachim's, and they made a huge cross out of 2 huge cedar trees. And I mean, it was big, it was heavy. And I remember Uncle D. Pat had a black man named Carnes that worked for him. That was his main man. Well, anyway, Carnes was probably about the only one there that was big and strong enough to handle that cross.
Really?
But I can remember me and Kathy, we were sitting off to the next to the St. Anne's roadside when they raised that cross and dropped it in the hole there. There's one thing that sticks in my mind forever. At the end of Mass, every Sunday, there's one song that was sang. Holy God, we praise thy name. And my granddaddy had been in the seminary before he married my grandmother, and he was taught how to sing, and you could hear him above everybody.
You know, I remember when I was a little boy, Daddy would take us up there, and they'd usually leave either Beth or Gail with me, and I'd stay up there 2 weeks, and Gail would come for a week, and Beth would come for a week. That's my 2 older sisters. Wow. And oh man, there was no place on this earth I had rather be. You know, and the whole week, you know, waited for Thursday when the rolling store came around, and Nanny would give you 15 cents, you know, something like that, and you'd get BBs and candy bars and all kinds of stuff. And you know, I remember us going out to the chicken house and picking up eggs and milking cows. And
I used to go there in the summers. I would, alongside of my uncles, the youngest of who was Thomas M. Harkins, work the fields. I would actually shuck corn. I would pick vegetables from the garden. I helped my grandmother with domestic stuff in the home. I had very wonderful summers there, many, many years. And along the way, I met a lot of interesting people and relatives. We were probably one of 5 or 6 families that lived along the main drag there in St. Anne's. The people were very close. They were close-knit from the standpoint of being related. pretty much revolved around the church there, which was in the St. Anne community also. But we had an awfully good time there in the summers when I was there. It was pretty hard work, and I was actually learning to do some pretty heavy chores when I was 8 and 9 years old. A lot of things happened over the summers when I lived there. We used to get together, Keith, and go up there, and everybody would take their spray washers, and we'd clean the tombstones, and you know, you'd see those names, and it meant nothing to you. All you knew was, well, here's another Lucky. But there were so many of them in that community.
Now we got a guidebook, John's written.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's good.